Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This is Ken.
And this is Nicole.
And welcome to our podcast series,
Burnout Burns, where we talk all about burning out, the factors, the signs, and how to lead a more sustainable life.
Today's topic is really about society has created this crazy busy place. So thinking about your own childhood, right? Like what was that like for you growing up as a child?
I think it was definitely a lot less scheduled compared to the kind of schedule I hear children have nowadays. Like after school, there's no real fixed time. I just have lunch, do my homework, whatever. But I recall like during my PSLE, which what is
okay.
PSLE?
For the benefit of those listening out there, PSLE is like primary school leaving examination. So it's like the major examination for school kids at about 12 years old of age, and they use the results of this to apply for secondary school. And so if you get better grade, you can have access to the better schools and so on.
Yeah, so during my year, during PSLE, I remember my mom would tell me this story. I would come home from school, have my lunch and all that kind of thing, and I would take a nap. And to her, she was like, how come during PSLE you are like napping in the afternoon? But I was really very tired, like from school and all that kind of thing. So I would take a nap. And I think studying for my PSLE was pretty chill. Like I was able to plan my own study time and also have enough rest and not stress out too much about it.
What do you observe nowadays? What's the trend when it comes to, parents and kids who are going through PSLE today?
Yeah, so today it's like completely different. My mom had a very hands-off approach, but now it's like the moms themselves or dad sometimes, are taking the exam as well, and I'm sure they have their reasons. I think in the past when teachers tell us like, you better do this, you better otherwise the rest of your life is going to be affected. After we grew up, we kind of realized that it's not true. Whatever you do in your primary school is not going to really affect the rest of your life. At least that's what we believe.
In a sense, there's this gravitas, right, when it comes to PSLE and making the grade the central theme in terms of a person's destiny, or like what kind of job opportunities or how successful you would be in life. And you can't afford to fail or do poorly in this, otherwise it sets the course of your entire roadmap as a individual.
Yeah, when a fellow friend mom who had PSLE kids explained to me why in their opinion the PSLE is so crucial to their future, is because they feel that the results from the PSLE affects what school you go to and what stream you go to. It basically affects how much opportunity you can have in the future, and thus affects your future.
And I think this discussion can really go a long way, right? Like you can even go into things like what sort of family background you come from and what sort of resources that you have access to, because we know that if you have more access to resource, you save time and then you create more opportunities. But yeah, that's a whole
other topic. Yeah, so if you're interested, there is actually this Channel News Asia documentary which covers the whole issue on meritocracy and how different students have access to different resources to do well in school or not.
Yeah, and on that note, I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that we are actually putting more pressure on kids at a younger age. This is observable with this article where we actually notice an uptick in terms of suicide. Suicide statistics are not great. I think it's quite sad when young people turn to that. But this article in CNA actually talks about the leading cause of death for youths actually aged from 10 to 29 for the fourth consecutive year. About a third of all deaths in these age groups were suicides. In terms of poor mental health increasing in Singapore, it seems that this age group, again, young adults, right, 18 to 29, have the highest proportion of poor mental health at 25.3%.
I think subconsciously our society also kind of inputs this messaging that you cannot make mistakes. We put such a big emphasis on doing well in PSLE because we're like, you cannot fail, because one failure is going to be so detrimental for the rest of your life. And I think this subconscious message really adds to the anxiety of the kids, and they become really afraid of failure, that when they experience failure, and sometimes even their failure is not even that big, they become so anxious and like this is the end of the world kind of feeling.
Yeah, and I think that messaging is really important, because if we are not conscious about it, we end up drilling into our kids or the future generation that success is really about avoiding failure. there is a prevailing problem in the United States, right? That actually young people nowadays are experiencing new levels of loneliness. And this could be a consequence of poor, meaningful interactions, be it at school or be it in their lives. One of the leading causes is actually young people do spend a little bit too much time on social media these days. What is your thought?
I was actually quite curious and I couldn't grasp the concept of why there was a loneliness epidemic. Diving deeper into the article where they said that, I think one of the examples was that young people were together, but they were together using social media. Well, I theorized that maybe the reason for that was because instead of having deep conversations that foster that kind of real relationship, that you feel secure in, that you feel a sense of belonging, that you feel somebody understands you or can empathize with you, we get a lot of short bursts of interactions and it's all very surface level. Like you actually come into contact with a lot more people nowadays, but you actually feel a lot more lonely. Another theory I have is that, you know, how sometimes when you go to, let's say, a big gathering, you meet up with a lot of people, but all of them are talking about things that are kind of like maybe not in the same, you don't have the same life viewpoint or you don't share the same values. So when you're in there in this conversation where everyone shares the same values except you start to feel very lonely. You start to feel like, oh, I'm the odd one out. I don't quite fit in here. Do I try to fit in or do I like stay in my Lone Ranger where I'm like in this bubble of where my thoughts are different from the people that I'm hanging out with. So then the final theory is that maybe because everyone is so busy in the home itself, you know, I can only imagine how busy everyone is in the modern society that we no longer have time for deep conversations because we are just so exhausted by life. And then that inability in a family context to build deep relationships or to have conversations that are more meaningful then spills over to our workplace and our friendships because we are also unable to develop those deeper relationships there that, you know, you feel heard, you feel seen, whilst everything is like so busy and you kind of feel lost in the speed of everything.
It seems that in a work context, we really want to have exponential growth every year.
More is more.
Yeah, more is more. And that is not necessarily market driven all the time. I don't speak for everyone, but some companies or some bosses expect you to produce more year on year without even, you know, necessarily giving you more resources. So essentially, it's actually putting more pressure on you to perform and to do more, which might mean like you have to devote more time or more of your resources into helping your company grow, and that actually takes away time from like what you mentioned, the family or relationships or building other things or hobbies or things to do with our well-being, which actually help to bring down that level of stress that we might be feeling or the anxiety.
Yeah, there's always this give and take, a trade-off basically that happens. There's actually this very interesting quote by Greg, who wrote the book Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And that's like one of my favorite books. Every time I'm burnt out, I will go and read that book. And he basically said that the word priority came into the English language in the 1400s. And it was singular, meaning there's only one priority. And it stayed singular for like 500 years. But now in our modern society, we like to have priorities. Everything is
plural nowadays.
Yeah. And this comes from the concept of more is more. And that's why the book, the subtitle is The Disciplined Pursuit of Less, because the opposite is often true in our life and in our business world, the ill-disciplined pursuit of more. And I think in society, we have developed this idea that you must be doing something, otherwise you are not being productive. And we have this very bad attitude towards resting, which brings me to this like Panadol ad that I saw recently, you know, like you're sick.
Shout out to Panadol.
I mean, we are not sponsored by Panadol. There was this ad. What, do I not say Panadol?
Shy. Pain relief.
There was this like ad, okay, where like the person is sick. I think it was like was some delivery driver, and then he he has a headache or he's sick, he's not well, and he takes this pill and he continue on with all, he can like, wow, deliver so fast, his hands are moving so fast and all that kind of thing. And I realized that in our work culture, we also don't even give ourselves time to rest when we are sick. And I get it. Sometimes, like moms say that they don't have time to rest. I find this concept of not even allowing yourself to rest when you're sick quite bad and toxic. I don't know if it's also linked to this idea of wanting it all the time, that we can't even do trade-offs like rest anymore.
There's so much pressures nowadays from society for us to continue to deliver despite being unwell. Unless you're like bedridden, I don't want to hear any excuses. Now you can work from home, right? So how are you feeling, Can you deliver? Can you still come for the meeting? Yeah. I used to remember like people showing up for meetings even though they lost their voice and things like that. And that sets the tone and the pace of the working world today.
And I think that also brings us to the next idea of value systems, right? Like we are being taught that career is the most important thing. Relationships or all these intangibles that make life meaningful are kind of like a footnote. I think people don't really want to talk about it. Their family life or their relationships do get affected when they put in too much emphasis on career. I mean, firstly, it's not fun to talk about, so you don't really know what's happening behind the scenes.
That's true. I think this brings us to a quote from Steve Jobs, basically when he was about to die, right? He said that I've reached the peak of success in the business world. My life is the epitome of success in the opinion of others. But still, I have nothing to be happy about except work. Therefore, I hope you can recognize that when you have a partner, a buddy, an old friend, sibling, you talk, laugh, sing, that is true happiness. So I guess the emphasis here is that he regrets not spending enough time with building, meaningful relationships that he felt would have made him probably happier, as opposed to spending a disproportionate amount of time in his work, which sounds almost like he wasn't as happy as he wanted to be.
Yeah, I think a lot of successful people have brought this up, that when they have attained everything that they wanted to attain in terms of wealth and in terms of stature, that it is not as meaningful or not as satisfactory as they thought it was going to be. But a lot of times people would dismiss those words and think that, no, it can't be true because it looks so good. It's like marketing basically. It looks so good, that success looks so good. How is it possible that it is not fulfilling?
I mean, we heard this all the time, eulogy virtues, where people talk about how do you want to be remembered when you eventually leave Earth. So I guess it's important for all of us to, I suppose, take stock of our own lives. What is that trajectory that we're heading towards? How do we want to be remembered? And I suppose myself, I don't want to live a life of regret, almost like I look back upon my life and go like, I could have done this better, I should have spent more time here. What do you think is the solution to all of this?
Finding a solution to your burnout, or like in general society's burnout, is really a deep work issue. It's not something that you can just treat the symptoms and it will go away, because it's something that if you don't treat the root problem, it will just keep coming back again and again. It's like, okay, I'm burnout, so I'm just going to take a holiday, I'm going to take a break, or maybe I'm going to go and buy stuff to ease the pain, or like, do some self-care, pampering, and that solves the issue for a while.
Yep.
But very soon you still have to deal with the root issue again. We are trying to brainstorm some possible solutions to help to work through what causes burnout. We are also on a discovery journey, but I think some things that really help us is really reflecting, like you said, and taking stock on what is a meaningful life to us, what is success, what is a good life to you as an individual, instead of taking on everyone else's opinion on what your life should be.
That's a good point, because I feel like once you start to intermingle what society tells us, right, we have external influences, and that really clouds what we think a meaningful life should be.
Yeah.
And after a while, that can really detract us from what we really want out of life. Maybe for a start, we could raise some questions, like things like you said, what's our value system? Nailing this down is really important. When you search inwards and you know what you want in life, no matter what people say or the external noise become softer, because that becomes like your core principle and your core mission. You keep going back to it, basically, right? When things change in life, you go back to this and you say, is this in line with how I really want or see my life heading towards? And that really helps you to kind of like a compass, right? Stay true to your compass.
Yeah, I think as human beings, we are very forgetful creatures, and that's why I feel it's important for me to write it down. When I forget and I go taking other people's input of what should be a successful life, I realize that when I go back to it, I can check, is this really in line with what I wanted? In the end, of course, if you write down what you really want in life, there is going to be that trade-off.
Yep.
Like whether you are willing to make that trade-off. Maybe you make less money, maybe you have less accolades or adoration,
career advancement opportunities. Like if we, are you willing to make such sacrifices? I'm not saying that we should always like adopt like a drastic take in life. Sometimes it means like taking a little bit of an adjustment, right? Maybe I've been coming home at 8 p.m. every day after work, and that does not allow me to like spend quality time with my wife or my family or my kids. So how can I make like little adjustments? Maybe like things like let me try to come back from work like on time this week, and then see how that plays out, and then ask myself, did that add some sort of value to the quality of my life, to the quality of my relationships, and to kind of just observe those things for a while. I feel that in life, it's the minor fine-tunings in life that actually help. Sometimes you don't really need a big change.
That's true. In fact, I would like to share a story that can help you to do better in life, instead of just like, okay, there are all these trade-offs. I mean, it sounds very negative, but there's actually this story in the book, The Essentialist, where this guy was saying yes to everything at work, because he didn't dare to say no, basically. And that actually affected his performance, because he was basically spread out too thin. And even his bosses think he was underperforming. So one day he asked a friend, what should he do? And the friend said, like, just prioritize as if you are a consultant instead of like, a worker. And he did so. And he actually had to say no to certain projects that he felt like he shouldn't be a part of. And he did better in his job. And it was actually recognized by the bosses. So I think that there is some good that comes out in knowing what you really want in life, because then the result would be more in tune with what you want.
I hope you guys have enjoyed the episode. Let us know, your thoughts on the matter, right? In terms of society, do you believe that it has become a really crazy place? We really want to hear from you.
And stay tuned for the next episode of Burnout Burns, where we will be discussing what success means to you personally, and how do you know if it's time to kind of quit or change a job or industry.
Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Ken.
And this is Nicole. See you in the next episode. Bye.